If we can actually make this work with Clubhouse recording live, we'll see how it goes. It could go incredibly bad. We're drinking live with an audience.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. May Jerome's true colors come out.
We'll either be canceled after the first week, or we'll make
Or I'm going to get a lot of new followers on our Instagram.
Right.
Like, who's this Jerome guy? I want to fucking drink with that dude.
You're listening to the Silver Screen Happy Hour. I'm Chris Wiegand, along with my brother Jerome. I decided I'm going to change the intro to this. If you want to know who we are, read the description in the show notes. We're a couple of brothers. My brother Jerome has some experience with screenwriting, so if you're interested in all that, look at the show notes. Otherwise, we're going to jump right in. I'm really excited about this Labor Day edition of the show. So I am still going to do the film reel thing because I'm a nerd and I like it. And so let me get the film reel going and we'll get this thing moving. Welcome back to the Silver Screen Happy Hour. I'm Chris Wiegand with my brother Jerome.
Hello, I am here.
Well, I've been looking forward to this. Right now, it's August. We're coming up on September in a couple of weeks, which means Labor Day is rapidly approaching. And we had the idea, we wanted to record an episode dedicated to the theme of organized labor and unions and stuff like that. So, what movies did we go with, Jerome?
We are going with the 1990, well, let's go in chronological order. The 1979 Norma Rae, which is Sally Field's first of her 2 Academy Awards for Best Actress. Mm-hmm. And it was her starting unionizing the workers of a textile plant.
And it was in the South. Do you remember what state it was set in? I'm trying to remember.
Well, I don't want to say deep South. I want to say it was like North Carolina or something like that.
I think you're right, yeah.
But it was, of course, she's met with a lot of opposition. It's loosely based on a real person. All the names are changed. But it was loosely based on a real event that happened. The other one we're going to do is really based on a real-life character. It was the film Hoffa, starring Jack Nicholson, which, of course, is based, not loosely, but factually on Jimmy Hoffa. This movie came out in 1992, directed by Danny DeVito, who also appears in the film as a sort of his number 2. It's an amalgamation role. It's not a real person. It's a mixture of, most people think 3 or 4 close associates to Hoffa were sort of mixed into one character.
Right.
That his name is Bobby Charo. But before we dig in to the script structures or non-existent script structures, which
I had problems with this too.
I got a lot to say about both. And the funny thing is, David Mamet wrote the screenplay for Hoffa, and I love David Mamet. He's one of my favorite screenwriters. And I don't know if he just needed to pay the rent, so he took the paycheck, or if he's like, because I'm so good and I know all the rules of screenwriting, what happens if I throw curveballs? Now, actually, I have less problems with Hoffa than I do with Norma. I have way more problems with Norma Rae's script. Yeah. Which, oddly enough, Hoffa did not get nominated for screenplay, but Norma Rae did. People were
that surprised me. I actually went to look on the. I looked to see what awards it was up for or won. Yeah. And I was surprised to see it was up for screenplay. I could not believe it.
Because the structure-wise, it's a mess. It is an absolute mess. It has some great dialogue. One of my favorite lines in the movie, we'll get to that. And good performances all around. Definitely a worthy film, but we'll get into why the script suffered. My problems with Hoffa actually could have been fixed with editing, and I'll get to that when we get to it. But what are we drinking today?
Yeah, I was going to say, put on the brakes. We need to talk about something else. So, strangely, I expected there to be more alcohol drinking in these movies. Yes. There really wasn't. I mean, there was some beer drinking.
There was some beer drinking in Norma Rae.
Yeah.
And there were a couple of scenes in Hoffa with the big shots and the mobsters drinking scotch, whatever. Yeah, but your basic scenes.
Yeah, so I just decided, I'm like thinking, I went to my local party store that I've talked about frequently, Wolverine, went and saw Andy up there. And I just went with a union-made bourbon whiskey, Jim Beam. And I went with Jim Beam specifically, not just that it's union made, but Jimmy Hoffa, right? So Jimmy, it's just, it was a stretch, but I got and Jim Beam's not a bad bourbon. I like bourbons. So.
Which is interesting that in the movie Hoffa, nobody ever calls him Jim. It's either Jimmy or James R. Right? James R. Or JR. Well, a couple times
on the bottle at the top, it does say James B. Beam Distilling Company.
There you go.
Here we go.
All right. Here's a riddle for you. What does the R in James R. Hoffa stand for?
Ralphie.
Funny thing is, I just gave you the answer. For those that know are already laughing. It's riddle.
Oh. Really? I didn't know that.
It's a riddle. Anyway, I did not go buy this. I got this for my birthday. My birthday was just a couple of weeks ago, turning the tender, fruitly age of 48. And I don't know what fruitly means. I don't know. But anyway, signifying I'm young, I guess. I don't know. So I got this for my birthday. My neighbors in my town all know me very well. They all know I drink, whiskeys and scotches and bourbons and all kinds of stuff. Mm-hmm. So one of them got me a bottle of Kentucky bourbon, Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. But this shit is strong. You know how most stuff is 40 proof, 80 proof, but 40% alcohol, right? So this is 100 proof. It's 50% alcohol, and it's called Heaven Hill. Mm-hmm. And I chose it for today because above the title of where it says Heaven Hill, it says bottled in bond under U.S. government supervision. So if there's anything that screams union and government, that stuck out to me. So I'm going with this, and because it's so strong, it signifies the strength of the Teamsters.
Okay. All right.
So we are.
It is strong.
Wait. All right. Here we go. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Did you get that?
I got it.
All right. Now how about this? This
is
always the hard
I like
part.
the cork. I like the cork. Oh yeah. Oh jeez.
Well, because I have this problem every time. First of all, I don't see.
He does have ice in it, so it looks fuller than it actually is.
So here's the problem I have. I want you to get the sound, so I will pour heavier than I usually should.
You do have a beer backup, right?
Which means I get drunk easier. Yes, as usual. Still looking for a sponsorship from Anheuser-Busch. I'm still backing up with some Michelob Ultra tall cans, the 25 ounces, to signify the beer drinking in Norma Rae. So
we should be able to get Budweiser to sponsor us. I mean, they're asking everybody for sponsorship.
They need the help right now, right? Let's do it. So I am backing up both films today. My Heaven Hill bottled in bond is for Hoffa, and my beer backup is for Norma Rae. So.
Right.
Let's start with Norma Rae.
Hold on, wait. Before we start and get into the movies, I thought we should have a little chat about unions. Full disclosure, I'm a UAW member, Local 1700 in Sterling Heights, Michigan. It's where we manufacture the Ram truck, and it is a contract year. So this podcast is going to hit the airwaves or the digital waves, I guess it's not airwaves, right before our contract is set to expire. And if you're watching the news, it's not looking good. It's looking more and more like there's going to be a strike. There's a lot of demands the union membership has put forth, and it's been received with a wet blanket, basically. The companies are not happy. Some of them, I know Stellantis put forth their proposals, and the UAW president did a video where he threw them in the trash. So that's kind of where we're at with the UAW right now.
It's bad.
And they even threatened for the first time, I don't believe they've ever done this before, the UAW president threatened to strike all three at the deadline if no one has settled, and then resolve them one at a time. So Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis striking all three at the same time. I don't think they can do that. I think the federal government will get involved because the entire Michigan economy will come to a screeching halt because so much is connected to the auto industry here. I mean, it's not just the part suppliers, but everyone that supports them, and like the restaurants and everything around an assembly plant. It's pretty crazy how, like, during the Great Recession, when a lot of the plants were idled, the economy just was hurting. out here. So we'll see what happens. I just wanted to give full disclosure that I'm a union member. Yeah.
Well, okay, I'll add one other piece. Is the article I read today in the New York Times. It wasn't published today. It was just something I stumbled across as I was preparing for the show. It was from March of this year. So it's actually before the Writers and Actors Guild strikes, which is another reason why we wanted to do this show.
Right.
Was to show solidarity for our brothers and sisters on the front lines of the SAG Screen Actors Guild Awards. That's just, it's funny how that just naturally comes out of your mouth when you say
Right.
Screen Actors Guild and the Writers Guild of America. So two unions that are on strike right now. When this article from the New York Times was written or published earlier this year, the strikes hadn't started yet. But they were talking about specifically what's going on in Michigan, where they did mention it was a contract year. But they also mentioned that in the last election, I guess the Democrats took over the Michigan Senate and the House. And one of the things that they're doing is they're repealing this bill that was posed by Republicans prior that made it harder for the unions. So
I believe it was the right to work bill.
Yes, the right to work bill.
I don't know. I don't know how much of an effect that actually had, because I know a lot of people that threatened to leave the union in some of our, at work where I work. I don't know anyone that actually did. You know what I mean? Everyone I know that's in the plants that have an option of being UAW members are UAW members. So regardless of where they stand politically, and I've held my nose, I got to be honest. It's no secret the UAW has just gone through a decade of corruption and prison, and it's insane what has happened.
And what we're going to talk about in one of the films today, you'll see that shit goes back a long ways.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Wherever there is money, there's corruption.
Yeah.
So
I am hopeful that this is a new day in the UAW, and we have new leadership that we just voted in. So we'll see how this goes. I'm hoping we don't strike, but it's looking more and more like we will. And everyone I talk to has the same attitude. They don't want to, but they're willing to.
Exactly.
Because there's been so many bad contracts over the years. There's a lot to make up for. So, anyways.
Well, and as far as the writers and the actors, for anyone that's listening that doesn't know a lot about what's going on there, there's a lot since the era of streaming and now artificial intelligence coming along and developing. There's a lot of opportunity to sort of screw over actors and writers. So they're trying to, and their contract was up this year too, and they're trying to, get a piece of that action. And they should, right? Because you don't have movies if you don't have writers and actors, right? Now, not everyone can do what they do. You hear about it all the time. Whenever you're at a party, you always hear somebody get a few drinks in them and say, "Oh, I was thinking about writing a movie." Everybody says that. But very few people can do it and do it well. Right? So let's jump right into 1979 Norma Rae, which I think was a big staple movie at the time because although unions have been around forever, or at least, they were popularized long before 1979, that was a big moment for, like I said, it was loosely based off a real story. So when you started to get textile factories, right, and factories that made everything, furniture, chairs, couches, anything where you were sitting in a hot warehouse with loud-ass noise blowing your eardrums out with all the machines, how long were we as humans, we're not built to withstand that for so long. You could probably speak better than I can about working in the auto industry and the auto plants, how taxing that can be on the human body.
Oh, yeah.
Your eyes, your ears, everything. When was it going to finally be time for us to stand up and say, you know what, you got to pay us better if we're going to do this. We need more breaks. We need more vacation.
Our bodies break down, so we need good benefits. We need to be able to go to the doctor and not be burdened by the mountain of medical bills we're inevitably going to pile up after our bodies break down from doing this job, the repetitive motions.
Exactly.
So, physical therapy. I can go down a list of things that I've had to do because of being on the assembly line for many years. But
so Norma Rae starts, the opening credits are, of course, the mill is the background, right? They want to kind of set up the shop where they work. In the beginning, the first actual scene of characters interacting, Norma Rae's mother's hearing is blown out. Like it's just done, right?
Yeah.
Now she gets it back. It's temporary, but that's the very first. That's kind of what starts the movie off, kicks the movie off, where she freaks out that she's talking to her mom and her mother can't even hear her. It's one of these settings where it's a small town and everybody in that town, that's the job they have. They work at this plant, right? They work at this mill. That's the only job in town, right? If you don't have that job, you ain't working. You know, so and there's no the workers aren't unionized at this point. There's no union. I should say they're not organized. And this is just an indication of what people have to go through. We'll get to it a little bit later. But so normally we talk about, here's my problems with the script. Let's just do we always talk about it. If you haven't seen the movies, watch the trailer.
Yeah.
Okay. The basic crux of this movie, what we always talk about is if you could get it down to a log line, which is what they call it in the industry, a log line. It's like a one-sentence explanation of the film, right? What is this movie about?
Right.
And generally that starts at the second turning point, or I'm sorry, the first turning point, which is your jump to Act 2, right? So Act 1 is all set up. You're introducing characters. You're introducing, what they do, what Blake Snyder used to call at work, at home, at play. What do they do at work? What do they do when they're home? And what do they do when they're relaxing, right? So you set up all of that, and then something happens that pushes the story forward, and the main character has to decide whether or not they want to go on this journey, and that jumps them into Act 2. None of that shit happens in the first act of this film, okay? There's setup, but that's all there is setup. And the log line of this film, I actually looked it up. In fact, I'm going to friggin' read it to you off of the Internet Movie Database. The log line for Norma Rae is, a young single mother and textile worker agrees to help unionize her mill despite the problems and dangers involved. So, technically, that should happen at the beginning of the second act.
Yeah.
When does Norma agree to help Ruben start the union? At the fucking midpoint scene, dude. Yeah. It's halfway through the film. Literally halfway of an hour and 54-minute film. Somewhere around the 56-minute mark, she agrees to help him set up the union. What the fuck's been going on this whole time?
Right.
Half the movie is over before she even decides. They spend so much time on setup and so much time on why the bosses are bad and the mill is bad, and she's such a loudmouth that the bosses will teach her a lesson. They'll make her in charge of what they call it, spot checks, where she has to go around and check everybody's work, and of course everybody hates her for that. That was the boss's way of sticking it to her, and all this shit. And I mean, poor Ruben spends the whole first half of the film, not the first act, the first half of the film doing all...
Tell the audience who Ruben is.
Okay, so Ruben is a labor organizer, right?
Yeah.
He is in town, and the movie starts off with him basically... After Norma Rae gets the mom home from the doctor because of her hearing, Ruben's knocking on the door. So he's already there in like the third scene of the movie.
Right.
And has a fun interaction with Norma Rae's dad, who obviously dislikes him and the idea of unions.
Right.
And we can talk about that, too, about why people feared the union. It wasn't that they feared the union. They feared the boss's response to a union.
Yeah.
And what does Pat Hingle, who plays Norma Rae's father, Vern, he says to him, people like you is how we lose our jobs. Yeah. Right? Because that's what they're afraid of. They would love to be part of a union where they get paid more and get more rest and get more vacation, but they're deathly afraid that they're just going to get fired if they unionize.
Right.
Right? So that's really the crux of the whole thing, is they're not really afraid of the unions. They're afraid of their boss's reaction to a union.
The retaliation.
So, right. So Ruben jumps in scene 3, and he spends the entire rest of the first half just trying to convince Norma Rae. Just... hey, this is all a lot of good. We can do a lot of good here. Need some help. What do you think? I'm going to go put some posters up. That fucking shit happens the whole first half of the film.
Yeah.
Finally, at the midpoint, she says, okay, I'll help you. And I'm like, now? This shit should have happened in the first 20 minutes if you want to tell this story right.
Right.
So that's my first problem is the pacing is way off. Now, we always talk about the theme is stated in the first 5 minutes. Well, since we don't even get to the turning point until halfway through, this one comes a little bit later. It's around 13 minutes in. What did you pick up? Did you pick up one?
No, actually, so here's the thing. I only watched it once, and I only watched it, usually try to watch these twice. And so Yeah, so I did not. I was trying to pay attention, like in that first 10 minutes, and then I was like, forget it. I'm just going to try and pay attention to the story, and then I lost the dialogue a little bit. Not,
So we always talk about the theme that stayed in the first 5 minutes kind of sets up
yeah,
the characters' goals, right? Their tangible and spiritual goals.
Right.
What it is they want versus what it is they need. 13 minutes in, she's sleeping around with that one guy, right, in the motel. Mm-hmm. The guy that hits her because she tells him she doesn't want to sleep around anymore. So, real classy guy.
Yeah.
He says to her, "What the hell are you good for anyway?" And that kind of sets up, because at that moment you realize, because she's sitting on the edge of the bed kind of all depressed that she's sleeping around, right?
Right.
I don't want to use a vulgar term. Let's just say she's very freely meets men and has relations. Can we say it that way?
Yeah, and I think because of like the situation she was in with this guy, she was feeling, basically probably low self-worth already, and then he throws that at her, and yeah,
absolutely. So we're setting up that she doesn't have very high self-esteem,
right?
But she's a fighter, right? She's just looking for a cause to fight for, and so that's why if structured better, this could have been a far better screenplay.
Right.
But I think because of these situations, the theme comes late. So because the theme comes late, there's not even really a first turning point. I guess if you really wanted to talk time-wise, the first turning point could be when they make her the spot checker. That's where things really start to change for her, because all of a sudden now she hates the job, right? Because now everybody hates her.
Right.
Right? But here's the funny thing. She wants out of it anyway, and they demote her back to the line. So it's almost like that whole stint was for nothing.
Right.
You know what I mean? So even that didn't make much of a difference in the story.
Right.
The arc of the story. Again, the story doesn't really pick up until halfway through when she agrees to help him. Then all the shit hits the fan, right?
Yeah.
Then it's now she's on the front lines, and she's helping, she's talking people into it. They're putting up posters and handing out flyers, and then it really starts to get thick. And that's when it really starts to pick up. The second half of the film is far better than the first half of the film.
Right. Yep. 100%.
But in the first half of the film, there is one of my favorite lines of the movie. It's not one of. It is by far my favorite moment of the film. My favorite line of the film. And a young Beau Bridges plays Sonny, who's her next man up, right? God, it sounds bad to say, but she goes through men like I go through cans of beer. So when Sonny comes along, he's just the next guy. But this guy's really nice. He's a really nice guy. He's got kids of his own. He really just is looking to settle down, and she gets with him because he seems like he's got some structure, right? All the other guys she's ever gotten with have all been loose cannons or whatever.
Right.
So Sonny, they're out having a beer. She, Sonny, and Ruben, played by Ron Liebman. Those of you younger crowd would know Ron Liebman played Rachel's dad on Friends for a few episodes.
Yeah.
So it did a great
job.
Younger
crowd. How?
Well, yeah, younger to me, I guess. But anyway, well, if you watch Norma Rae in the theater,
yeah, exactly. You're an old fogey.
You weren't watching Friends, right? So you're not watching Friends. But anyway, so they're all together. The three of them are having a beer, which is interesting because there's a hint of a Ron Liebman, Sally Fields sort of love interest there, right? Like they play around with this. Are they going to hook up? Right. There's even a scene where they go skinny dipping in the river together. Well, if Sonny knew that shit was happening, he wouldn't have been too happy, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So there's a lot. They do everything but kiss in this movie. Like there's a lot of flirtation.
Right.
There's a lot of, there's a lot of innuendo. It just seems like they're going to hook up, but they don't. It's reminiscent, when I watch it today, of Tom Cruise and Demi Moore in A Few Good Men, right?
Yeah.
They never hook up.
Yeah, but they had chemistry, right?
But there's a lot there where you're like, well, these two are obviously going to bone, right? but they don't, or at least we don't see it on screen, right? Like that's A Few Good Men Part 2, right? We don't ever see that movie. But anyway, so you get that hint with Ruben and Norma Rae, but it never happens, right?
Right.
So, but anyway, in this scene, they're out having a drink. She spots Ruben in the bar and says, hey, come on over and join us. So they're all sitting there drinking and stuff. And he starts telling Sonny all about the union. Of course, Sonny is as standoffish as everybody else in that town because they're afraid to lose their jobs.
Right.
He says, after Ruben explains what he's there for in the union, Sonny says, I had to write this down because I love this line so bad. I even rewound it. Can I say that anymore? It was on digital. I backed up. There better be more than one of you, because there's more than one of them. And Ruben says, there will be. So what I love so much about that is, and Sonny says it with a smile on his face, almost like it's never going to last. You guys have come, every few years you come and try to start a union, and there's a reason why you don't. There's only one of you, and there's a shitload of them, and they can always fire us, and you can't. That's why unions never work in this town, and they never work. He's saying all of that in one sentence.
Right, right.
And that's why I loved that line.
Yeah, that was good writing.
From then I was like, that's the best line of the movie. So, as we talk about the second act in movies, after the midpoint scene is when everything goes to shit because they think something good's going to happen. Again, false victory usually happens at the midpoint. Norma Rae's false victory was, I'm going to help Ruben get this union started and everything's going to be great. Well, not everything is great after that. Everything starts to go to shit.
Was that around the time her dad died?
So, okay, so...
I mean, spoiler alert. Her
Yeah.
dad. Can we just talk about how cheesy that was? I laughed out loud when he died.
Oh, you laughed?
I laughed out loud because it's like, so he was obviously having some issue, and I'm like, oh, he's having a heart attack.
Yeah, right.
They in the line boss wouldn't let him take a break.
Take your breaks in 15 minutes.
And I'm like, oh, he's gonna die. So I called it. As soon as I saw it, I'm like, oh, he's going down. And then he literally just goes face plants right in the parts bin,
right,
or whatever
the
the what was it, a fabric bin, or I can't remember. He just went face down.
It's the rollers that the fabric is
Yeah,
usually on, and
but
he's loading
so
all
funny.
the empty. He's unloading all the empty rollers from one bin to another.
But it was almost comical. I'm getting
I can't believe you're laughing.
It was almost comical because he literally just went face down right into it.
What was weird is
But it looked so fake. That's why I thought it was funny. I'm like, come on, man.
All right, you and I disagree a little bit on that. I thought it was kind of freaky. Because not just how quick it happens, but both his arms fucking go limp.
Yeah.
And then he just keels right over.
Yeah. I'm just an asshole, that's all.
And right into the part spin. Like you said, right into all the rollers.
I shouldn't be laughing at it because I literally was working with someone that died on the line.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Did you laugh then?
No, I did not. No, I did not. No, this was 20 years ago. It was horrible. The guy we're like, hey, where'd he go? Because he was on the other side of the line. The vehicles were going by, and then the vehicle went by. There's a little gap, and he's laying on the ground.
Oh my
horrible.
God.
So they,
yeah,
temporarily stopped the line. But this crazy thing about the auto assembly plants, that line did not stop for long. They basically got his body out of the way and kept it going.
And I thought about some other movies that we kicked around for this show. We originally were going to do 9 to 5, not so much for unions, but about workplace harassment and stuff like that. Right. We were going to do because of Labor Day, we were doing an just work show, right?
Yeah.
So we originally had 9 to 5. Another one I kicked around was Gung Ho. You remember that Michael Keaton movie in the 80s?
Funny, yeah.
Where the Japanese auto workers come and set up in Ohio?
Yeah.
And there's just the clash there is so great, the whole movie. But something like that happens. The guy gets his hand caught in the thing on the line, right? Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh my God. And all the American guys rush over to get his hand free, and it's gushing blood. And the Japanese guy gets on the horn. He's all, back to work.
Right.
Back to work, right? Like, what the fuck, dude? This guy almost lost his hand.
Yeah.
But like you're saying, that shit's reality.
Yeah, that's real. Oh,
that's a next man up. Talk about football. Next man up. Whoever gets hurt, the next guy comes up. It's like that in the auto industry, apparently.
Yeah, oh yeah, it still is. So, a movie that I was going to propose, but when you said Hoffa, I thought that was a good choice. But that it's like a rom-com. Renee Zellweger and Harry Connick Jr. They are both in New in Town. That's the name of the movie, New in Town.
I've never seen it.
It's a pretty good rom-com, but Harry Connick Jr. plays the union rep, and Renee Zellweger she plays the executive that comes to the plant to change things. And of course, they fall in love, right?
Right, of course.
You can.
Yeah.
But anyway.
The union in that movie is just a backdrop. It sounds like the whole movie is really about the romance.
But the way it felt very much like almost like a Tommy Boy, Callahan parts, that kind of environment with the worker. It's very pro worker, right? So that's why, that's why I thought it would be a good choice.
So Norma Rae culminates in her all is lost moment. Well, actually, before the all is lost moment, culminates in her big Oscar scene, right?
Yeah.
Or anyone that knows the movie knows what I'm talking about. She's having it out with the bosses. They're trying to send her home. She doesn't want to go anywhere. They tell her, we're going to have the police come and get you out of here.
Right.
She ain't having it. It's the big scene where she stands up on the table, writes union on the cardboard, and holds it up, and one by one, everybody turns their machines off.
Yeah. That was a great
Very
scene.
reminiscent of Dead Poets Society's final scene, where they all one by one stand up on the desks.
Exactly.
That's the vibe I got. And I was
Yeah.
getting chills because it was shot so well.
Yeah.
Where there's people staring at her, including Seinfeld fans, Mrs. Ross, the woman who plays Susan Ross's mother on Seinfeld,
Right,
is
yeah.
one of the mill workers. But anyway,
Yeah.
talk about you laughed at the Norma Rae's death scene. Every time they showed her face, all I could hear in my head was, "Look, Henry, I spilled wine on me." From Seinfeld. So
Right.
that's all I could think about when I saw her. But anyway, so it's a great scene. One by one, they turn off their machines. They escort her out of the plant, and what's waiting for her outside the plant is a cop car. She is getting arrested. Now, what's interesting is that Hoffa and Norma Rae are two opposites when it looked at arrests and the cops, right?
Right.
Hoffa was a kind of guy that was like, fuck it, bring it. You know what I mean? You want to take me down? You ain't taking me down, whatever. It's another bullshit, trumped up charge. Norma Rae starts fighting like they're taking her to the execution. Like,
Right.
she looked at arrest like the biggest blemish you could have in your reputation. She even comes home from the jail that night and wakes up all her kids and tells them,
Yeah.
Mama's a jailbird.
Right.
Jailbird.
Well, and she was worried about what people gossiping
town would
around
say, right,
the kids
exactly.
and it getting back to the kids. So, yeah, they did a good job playing that out, though.
Yeah,
So.
they did. And then, of course, that pushes you into the third and final act where she's obviously given up everything now. And the workers, that was all they needed. That was the final straw. They decided to have a vote.
Right.
And it goes good. They win it. So again, we talk about tangible and spiritual goals. If you would have said in the beginning of the film to Norma Rae's character, how would you like to be out of a job by the time this movie's over? That she would have said, no way. I'm not doing anything that's going to risk my job. This is the only job in town. It's the only way for me to make money for my kids. So her goal, her tangible goal, is to have the job, right? To get a raise. That's why she takes that job that she hates.
Yeah.
The spot checker.
Right.
Which I did a little inflation, adjust for inflation.
Yeah.
For fun. I can't remember the number he used. I think he says it'll pay you an extra $1.50 an hour, something like that. And she jumps at it.
Yeah.
$1.50 in 1979, it's like $7 today.
Yeah. It's like giving her a $7 raise.
Right. So imagine if you're talking to a worker who works at anywhere and they make, say, $17, $18 an hour, and you tell them they're going to make $25. They jump at that, right?
Right.
That's something they're gonna. So it's very realistic why she jumped at that job that she hated so much. So that's that leads to the third act where, and then again we talk about the tangible goal. She just wants a job. She wants to be able to put food on the table for her kids, find a nice guy like Sonny, and live happily ever after. But her spiritual goal, which she did not know she needed, was to be basically the hero of the town, right? Mm-hmm. She gets the union there. Now, Ruben, he doesn't even stop for a second to take all the credit at the end when she's walking him to his car. He's praising her. You know what I mean? He's basically telling her, I couldn't have done this without you. You know what I mean? She's the hero. She's the hero of the story. And she did not intend for that to happen. That was, not what she thought was going to happen. But that's what you get with your spiritual goal. It's what you didn't know you needed.
Right.
And you achieve it. So what are your thoughts overall? I mean, otherwise, like I said, I think the first act was not written very well. Nominated for screenplay, oddly enough, but not written very well.
Yeah,
and had some problems. It really picks up in the second half.
Yeah, and I couldn't put my finger on it because you analyzed it closer than I did, and I think the first half of the movie it feels like it drags because of that, so it didn't move as quickly as I'd hoped. But it does pick up, and I totally understand the best her award for best actor.
Absolutely.
Female actor in a lead role or whatever I can't remember Is that how you say it? Best
actress in a leading role.
Actress in a leading role, yeah. I totally get that. She was fantastic. But yeah, I was still shocked that they nominated it for screenplay. So
and Ron Liebman did not get a Best Supporting Actor nomination, oddly enough.
And he did a great job. So
he did it, and he is like, you know, when you talk about the Obi-Wan, he's the Obi-Wan basically, right?
Yeah.
He's the driving force for the main character, and he didn't get shit. I want to say it got nominated for Best Picture. I think it got 4 or 5 nominations, and it only won. It only had 2 wins: Best Actress and I think Best Song, which is the song they played at both the opening and closing credits, I want to say.
Right.
So, but again, pacing is so important for anyone that listens to our podcast because they like the writing tips. You can look no further than pacing. Pacing is everything with writing. I mean, you could try to write great dialogue.
Especially in the day and age of streaming. I mean, who's going to sit through a movie? I mean, unless they're going to be talking about it on a podcast. If you lose them in the first half hour, they're probably not going to finish it.
Well, and it's funny you should say that because recently the movie Oppenheimer came out in theaters. I went to see that opening weekend. Oppenheimer's 3 hours long.
Right.
And it doesn't feel like it at all. That's how good the pacing is of the writing of that film.
Yeah, I have yet to see it. I really want to.
Because the scenes, they're coming, right? They're one after another. It's like this happens, and then this happens, and then that happens. I remember going, holy shit, we're moving right along. Like, this seems like a quick movie. But at the same time, it's not rushed to where any of the story is lost.
Right.
I think it's came out in July, I think, so it's the early front runner for, you know, your basics: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Screenplay. It was fantastic. Oppenheimer is fantastic. And like I said, 3-hour film, you don't feel a minute of it. Some films, you feel every minute of it, right? Like I remember telling people...
Like The English Patient.
Oh, God. That one actually felt double.
I love that Seinfeld did it.
Yeah, the Seinfeld episode.
Just die already.
Just die already. Who has sex in a tub? It doesn't work. But anyway, another one that I was thinking of, which actually isn't a bad film, but it's definitely only watched once. It's not a repeater. The Curious Case of Benjamin Buttons, the movie with Brad Pitt where he ages backwards.
Right.
Man, you feel every minute of that movie. It felt like the longest movie I've ever seen. And when I came out of the theater, people would ask me, how was it? And I was like, it was all right. But goddamn, I'm not watching it again. There's no way. Like, we could never do that show for the podcast because then I'd have to watch it again, right? And it felt like the longest movie ever. Yeah. But anyway.
Oh, I forgot to show you. I'm wearing my UAW T-shirt.
So again, for those of you that listen to these podcasts, we can see each other. You just can't see us.
Yeah.
We are 2,300 miles away from each other, but we can see each other through the beauty of Zoom.
Right.
But we're not advanced enough to where you guys can see us. Someday we'll have video along with this. And then there's shit will really hit the fan because you'll see, you know, what happens to my eyes when I drink too much of this shit.
Hey, I'll throw this out there. We're going to start experimenting on the app Clubhouse. So if you're on Clubhouse, come over and look at us. If you're not on Clubhouse, download the app and come check us out. We're going to experiment with the idea of basically doing our show except live, and we'll be able to have people come up and converse with us, talk to us, ask questions, give their input on movies that we're discussing. So we're gonna start toying around with that in the near future. And the cool thing about it is if it actually works and it doesn't turn into a total shit show because there's drunk people live on the app, then we're able to record it and upload that as a episode as well. So you might see it in the podcast feed that we have some live episodes coming up soon. But again,
we played with it last week just for fun.
Yeah, we just went on to check it out, and I'm intrigued by it. So yeah, I go on there a lot. I like going into Clubhouse and listening and joining in some different houses. There's different themes. So we'll be in the Film Talk house. So that's what you want to look for, Film Talk. And find that house. It'll
still say Silver Screen Happy Hour.
And when we open a room, it'll be the Silver Screen Happy Hour room inside that house. Yeah. So, anyways, are we done with Norma Rae? Did you want to jump to Hoffa? Where are we at?
Yeah, I think we can move on. Is there anything else you wanted to add about Norma Rae? I mean, I think we pretty much covered the bases here.
Yeah, not really. I mean,
it's worth seeing if you haven't seen it for the performances alone, and fairly decent. Go ahead.
For Hoffa, I'm already.
Ooh,
need another
boy.
double.
Oh boy. I'm telling you, I'm already feeling this 100 proof shit.
I'm just doing them neat too. I ain't got no ice, no water. I do have a bottle of water here though, so.
Oh man. See if I get my notes right, because they all look like blurry now. All right, so Hoffa. All right, Hoffa. First impressions right off the bat. Now, I tell you another thing I got serious vibes about is when we did the Walk the Elvis show, where we did Elvis and Walk the Line.
Yeah.
A lot of things stuck out to me when you're doing biopics, right? One of the things from Elvis, what was our big critique on Elvis? Whose story is it, right?
Right.
Whose story is it? Because it's supposed to be about Elvis, but it's all from the point of view of the colonel or whatever his name was, the guy that Tom Hanks played.
Tom Hanks character, yeah.
Hoffa starts off the same problem, right? Whose fucking story is it? Because it's set up to be Hoffa's story, but it's all through the eyes of Bobby Charo, who's played by Danny DeVito, right? So it seems like his story.
Who also happens to be the director.
Yeah, right, he's the director.
At least he didn't write it. I mean...
Right, he didn't write it. David Mamet wrote it. And again, if David Mamet ever hears this, let me preface this by saying, sir, you are a genius, and I love your movies. And someday I'm going to get you drunk, and I want you to talk to me about Hoffa, because there's a few things at play here. Either you sat in the theater when it came out and said, the editing fucked up my writing.
Yeah.
Or you said, well... Yeah, I had to pay the fucking rent, and I needed a paycheck. And I don't
know. Wasn't that Danny DeVito's debut as a director?
No. He had done other things. I think he directed War of the Roses before this.
Oh,
that was a late 80s movie.
Yeah.
He's directed some. Yeah. But the critique on Danny DeVito's movies, and I read this online, because I was looking up, to see what other people thought. I was like, I'm curious to know what other people thought. First of all, Siskel and Ebert both gave this movie a thumbs up when it came out.
Oh, okay.
But one of the critiques I came across, not from Siskel and Ebert, but from some other writer, was that Danny DeVito's movies, his signature director theme is that the movies always start with him.
Yeah.
They always got to show his eyes. And sure enough, in Hoffa, there's a fucking close-up of his eyes looking pensively or thoughtfully off the window, out the window or whatever. We always got to see Danny's eyes. I love Danny DeVito, by the way.
I did like a lot of his camera shots and different things he did with the cinematography.
He did a lot of tricks. By the way, it was nominated for cinematography.
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was visually, I liked it. So
we're gonna get to some of those director tricks a little bit later.
Yeah, okay.
Because I did write down a couple of those that were interesting. Some people might call it, I don't want to say amateurish, because he's not an amateur. He's been around. He had directed a lot of stuff. He had directed a lot of episodes for TV as well. He was on Taxi for a long time. I want to say he directed some episodes of Taxi as well.
Probably, yeah.
So he knows what he's doing. He's not an amateur at all. But there are little sort of director tricks that people do that somebody like Scorsese might say, it screams of a novice filmmaker. You know what I mean? Even though he's not. But, Danny's got his own.
He likes the tricks.
Danny's eccentric, so he likes to do his little things. But anyway, so that's the first problem I think with the script right off the bat is who the fuck story is this? Because everything is through Bobby's eyes. Bobby, when I say Bobby, I mean Bobby Charo. When I get to Bobby Kennedy, I'll probably say RFK so that there's no confusion.
Okay.
But Bobby is Bobby Charo, who plays his right-hand man. Like I said, it's an amalgamation, it's a made-up character of people that were, truly in his life. Interestingly, and we're going to get to The Irishman as well, because there's things about the movie The Irishman, which was directed by Scorsese, that make you suggest that possibly Bobby Charo, one of the people he's based on, is Frank Sheeran, who is the Irishman, who was known as the guy that killed Jimmy Hoffa. Or thought to. There's a lot of people that dispute that. But he also was supposedly the mobster that killed Crazy Joe. I think his name was Crazy Joe Gallows, a mob boss. All this is in The Irishman, which is another 4-hour movie. But there are some things that connect these two together. But anyway, so whose story is it? We're not really sure, because all the plot points seem to be Jimmy's. But Bobby's almost never off screen. He's in every damn scene. Because even if it's a scene involving Jimmy Hoffa, and Jack Nicholson is larger than life, right?
Yeah.
We know that already. And he commands the screen like he's larger than life. But every scene he's in, there's Bobby in the background, right? It's almost like he's witnessing everything.
I do have to say, man, the way, I don't know if it's just makeup and like the way they cut his hair and Jack's presence on the screen, he became Jimmy Hoffa to me.
Two Oscar nominations.
Yeah, he did a great job.
That's it.
Yeah.
Cinematography and makeup was the other one.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, because of the nose. You know that was a fake nose.
Okay, well
they put that nose on, and then they did something with his teeth.
Yeah, they did something with his teeth.
Yeah.
But he became Jimmy Hoffa to me, and that was a big part of it.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
his acting had something to do with it too, but...
And Roger Ebert said that too. Although I disagreed with their review for most of it, the first thing that Roger Ebert does say when he does his review back in 92 is, it doesn't take you long to accept that Jack is Jimmy Hoffa.
Right.
Like in the first frame, you buy it right away.
Yeah.
Just because of how good Jack is and because of how good the makeup was, you accept it right away, you know? I felt that way with Elvis, too. I thought that Austin Butler, who played Elvis, did a fantastic job, you know?
Yeah.
So some movies, it takes you out of it, but this wasn't one of them. Like this, he really pulls off a pretty good Hoffa. In fact, I would venture to say that Jack makes Hoffa tougher.
Mm-hmm.
If you watch some of the old YouTube videos of the old congressional hearings and shit, the real Jimmy doesn't come off as tough.
Yeah.
Jack makes him tougher in this movie. It's almost like Danny DeVito told him, like, hey, you know, we got a lot of footage to go on where you can get sort of like his mannerisms down and maybe how he talks down. But I want you to make him tougher. Like, he should be tougher. And Jimmy Hoffa was a tough badass to begin with.
Yeah. But he knew when to turn it on.
Right. So when you watch old video clips, like, you know, one of the things that we're going to talk about is the McClellan Committee and the 1957 Senate hearings where he's talking to RFK. In real life, those are on YouTube. You can watch those. In real life, he is answering questions. Now, it's not like he's being delightful, but he's answering questions. But in the film Hoffa, Jack's fucking pissed, man. He's giving it to him, right?
Yeah.
He's really giving it to RFK. He's really letting him have it. So, so we're getting off the rails here as we usually do. So let's get back to whose story is it? We're gonna assume it's Jimmy's through Bobby's eyes.
Because the name of the movie is Hoffa.
It's not Bobby Charo. It's Hoffa. All right, so what's the theme stated? Did you catch a theme? I caught one in the first 10 minutes.
No, I didn't.
Okay, so
Which is funny. I usually, like I said, I usually watch them and then rewatch them. Well, I've seen this one before, but it's been a long time. It was in the 90s, I think, that I last saw Hoffa. So this time I kind of just watched it again for the first time, and I didn't analyze it as much. But
so you remember when we talk about, we actually skipped this part with Norma Rae. We can bounce back for a second. The theme is usually the central question given to the main character, right?
Yeah.
And they spend the rest of the movie with that tug of war, that emotional tug of war of will they or won't they succeed in whatever theme was dropped on them, right?
Right.
And Norma Rae, as we said, it was the guy said, what good are you anyway? And I will say one thing about that film and the screenplay, there is a lot of back and forth there. Half the scenes, she's feeling down again. Like, I am worthless. I am a piece of shit. I can't do anything right. And the other scenes, she's really hammering people.
Right.
We got to do this. Let's go. Rah, rah, rah.
Defending her mom. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So there is back and forth in Norma Rae. I'll give it that. Hoffa, interestingly, I did detect 10 minutes in, although it's not said to the main character, unless you think the story is Bobby Charo. Because let's face it, the movie starts and ends pretty much with Bobby, right?
Right.
That's the other thing, and that's one of my other problems with it. Another thing that other film critics praised, I thought, was a bad decision by Mamet and DeVito and everybody else. There is no backstory on Hoffa. When we start, he's already a Teamsters boss. He's not the boss, he's not the president.
Right.
But he's already
he's an
a Teamsters
active
guy.
Teamster, yeah.
And what is it, halfway through the movie, we find out he's got a wife and kids? What the fuck? When did that happen, right? There is no discussion of any of that. And the praising that came from a lot of critics was, well, that's how Hoffa was. He cared so much about the Union that his private life didn't matter. Well, if I'm a film goer, I want to know both Walk the Line and Elvis showed them as kids.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot that makes you who you are. I want to know why Hoffa got into the Teamsters.
Yeah.
I want to know how this happened. They mentioned that he used to be a trucker. Well, big fucking deal. I want to know more. I want to know how that story happened. And none of that shit is in this movie. It starts with him meeting Bobby. We basically see Bobby's start, right?
You know, and that would make it a more powerful story if you can identify
if you
with
knew
the
what his
struggle
motivations
of
were,
being
right.
an over-the-road truck driver. I mean, I know so many people who, over the years, who were over-the-road truck drivers. And, you know, it would add a dimension to the character knowing that he lived it, you know?
And for anyone saying it would make it too long of a film, I'll take any 3 or 4 hour film if it's made right. We just got done talking about Oppenheimer. I don't give a shit. I was on an Aliens site on Facebook.
Yeah.
And somebody was like, yeah, James Cameron's director's cut or something is like 3.5 hours long. I was like, I don't give a shit. I don't care how long it is.
I want to see that.
If it's good, I will fucking take in whatever you give me. I don't care if it's 5 hours long. Yeah. Kenneth Branagh did his version of William Shakespeare's Hamlet that was 4 hours. I loved every minute of it.
Case in point, the special editions of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. It's like 20 hours long.
I was going to say, Jesus Christ, those movies are long as they were. But Peter Jackson gets it.
Yeah.
They won't care how long it is.
Right.
My audience won't care how long it is if I do it right.
Yeah.
And I think that's where Hoffa misses the boat, is they probably thought, we can't show any of that. It's going to be too long of a movie. I don't give a shit, man. I want to know the motivation. How did Jimmy become Jimmy? And we don't see none of that.
Yeah.
So that's a problematic right off the bat. But that leads to my theme stated. Usually it's to the main character, which gets them on this sort of journey back and forth. This one, Jimmy says himself. He says it to Bobby. 10 minutes in, after Bobby puts a knife to his throat, and then his then number 2 comes up and puts a gun right in Danny DeVito's nose. And of course he drops the knife, right? He's like, oh shit, well, your gun is better than my knife. So he puts the knife down. Hoffa walks up to him and he pats him on the shoulder and he says, life is a negotiation. It's all give and take. And what's interesting, why I pointed that out as the theme, is look at the whole rest of the movie, right? All the scenes where they're back at the roadhouse waiting for this mob talk they're supposed to have, that's him giving in, right? It's him not being tough. Who the hell does Jimmy Hoffa wait around 4 hours for? Jimmy Hoffa don't wait for nobody, but he waits for them, right? So it's him giving in. All the other scenes, present day scenes, it's taking, right? So that's the back and forth with Hoffa's character is, there was only certain times with D'Alessandro, who, again, is not the real boss. I want to say, they mention it, again, in The Irishman. I think his name was Anthony Provenzenzo or something like that. That was the mobster that what they called Deli? That was the nickname for D'Alessandro, was the mobster that Armand Assante plays.
So, here we go. This is going to be something to ponder. Maybe something's been written about it, and I just don't know. But so do you think when they were making this movie, they didn't want to use the real names of the mafia because they were afraid?
Some of them are still alive.
Yeah, exactly.
Some of these guys died like in the early 90s.
Yeah.
They were still alive then. Maybe.
Because, I mean, that happened with The Godfather, right? They consulted the mob when the mafia,
those families were completely made up as far as
they were
names.
Completely made up, but they were even concerned about how they portrayed them, right?
Right.
So they actually consulted.
Well, that's why The Irishman was able to get away with a lot of it, because they based their shit on a book called I Heard You Paint Houses, which, by the way, if you haven't seen The Irishman yet, it's a great title for a book, and the movie starts with that as like a title, like a chapter 1, I Heard You Paint Houses. You know what that means?
No.
I heard you paint houses. It means you kill people because the blood from their brains gets splattered all over the walls.
Oh, God.
So when Hoffa says to Frank Sheeran, the Irishman, in the movie The Irishman, I heard you paint houses, that means I hear you kill people. I could use a guy like you.
Wow.
Right? So
yeah, and that is a movie I haven't seen yet.
Yeah, we should do a mob show one of these days.
I think the length of it, I just didn't make the time when it came out, you know. So, no, it's definitely one I need to get back to.
So, Anthony Provenzano, that's what it is. I wrote it down here. I couldn't find it in my notes. Provenzano is the character that D'Alessandro is based on. He was a mobster, And he was the one that was doing all the direct ties with Hoffa as far as the Teamsters. They wanted to use the pension fund to funnel money to launder money for the mob. That's the crux of it. That's basically what their connection to the mob was. So as I wrote my notes down, I wrote down Act 1, and the first word I wrote was, it's fuzzy. Like, I don't even know. Like, there's so much weird shit going on that there's no back, and I wrote this down, there's no backstory for Jimmy at all. Not how he got to how he came to the Teamsters, how he got to be who he is. None of that shit. The character of Bobby Charo is fictional, so they can make up whatever they want. And again, the movie really starts with them meeting each other in the truck. Yeah. Right. So I think there's more of a clear. So that's kind of the setup of who these guys are. Right. The death of Bobby Flynn happens, and when they set that laundry place on fire. Yeah. And there's a lot more there, too. But that kind of leads to the first turning point was, why does Bobby get to take his spot? Why does Bobby get to slide right in as the number 2? What they hint to, anyway, is that because he speaks Italian, right? So the very first turning point is where they're at that big ruckus where they're all got the bats out and shit, and they're all doing this Teamster riot. Right. And those 2 mobsters start walking towards Jimmy, and he's like, fuck, I'm either going to die right now, the shit's about to get their hands. So he grabs a pipe, right? Yeah. He's like, I'm not going down without a fight. And they really just want to talk to him because they're from the mob. They want in on this. So that's when he gets Bobby to translate for him because he doesn't understand a word they're saying. Right. So that's how Bobby gets in. So that, to me, that I felt that was a strong sort of jump to Act 2. Now we know why Bobby is his new right-hand man. Right. Billy Flynn dies. Bobby takes his spot because he speaks Italian and he can translate for the mob. Sure. So then it starts all this setup. Now here's where I get a problem around the midpoint scene, right? So the midpoint scene is supposed to be the thing that happens that changes the direction of the story, right? Or the main character gets their tangible goal. Right. Okay? If you go by minutes, if you go by the actual timeline, the midpoint scene is the McClellan Senate hearings with RFK. Right. Nothing is gained there. Right. There is nothing gained there. 20-some minutes later is what I feel is the story's midpoint. Wow. Jimmy wins the election and becomes president of the Teamsters. He says early in the first act, my goal is someday I'm going to be president of the Teamsters. He's telling you flat out what his tangible goal is. Right. Right? And he achieves, and remember, we said the characters always achieve their tangible goal, what it is they want, at the midpoint scene. So he becomes elected president 23 minutes past the midpoint scene. That's his midpoint scene. So the timing is off there. Here's why it takes 23 fucking minutes. They do a 3-scene sequence where after the RFK hearings, he gets stopped in his car by Tom Harmon of the Detroit News, who tells him, we got shit on you and we're going to run it. And Hoffa says, I'd be careful about that. You know, blah, 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 blah. Now, mind you, he isn't president yet. Right. This is before he wins the presidency. In fact, that's a sticking point. Is this going to hurt your run for the president of the Teamsters? All this dirt we have on you that we're going to run. The next scene, Bobby Charo is at the morgue, getting his hands on a jar with a dude's dick and balls in it. And then the third scene of this sequence is delivering that box to the Tom Harmon at the Detroit News, who sees this dick and balls in a jar and kills the story. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And then the next scene after that is he's elected president. That dude, he played a part in CSI. That's what I remember. He's been in a shitload of stuff. I remember him from the original CSI series. I can't remember his name in that series. It's Guilfoyle or something? Yeah. Guilfoyle? Great actor. I love that guy. Yeah, he's been in a lot of shit. He's been in a lot of stuff. And that's his only part in this movie, is that 3-scene sequence. Yeah. There's a lot of cool moments in that sequence, but it could have been after. In fact, here's where I think it's not so much the writing as it is the editing. If they would have ended the RFK Senate hearings and then went to where he's elected president of the Teamsters, it does a couple things story-wise. It shows that the Senate hearings didn't hurt his reputation, but strengthen it. Yeah. Because he gives RFK, puts him in his place, right? He trumped him. He trumps him. So then he becomes president. I meant that in a euchre way. You meant it as a Donald way. I meant it in the political way, yeah. You meant it in the Donald way. If we've learned nothing since 2016,
Trump had a way. And,
he had a way with it. He has a way with words. So he has the best words. Just ask him. So anyway, so then if you would have shown him winning the presidency of the Teamsters then, it shows that strengthened. And then if you did that 3-scene sequence right after, it shows, look what I can do now.
Yeah, exactly.
Look how
I got
powerful
the power.
I am, right?
Yeah.
Instead, they put it before that, and it pushes the story's midpoint scene too late.
Yeah, dragged
and it almost fucks up with the pacing. And again, people are probably listening to this going, well, who gives a shit? Look, as a writer, if you want to learn pacing, things have to hit at certain points.
Yep.
And the midpoint scene, which is halfway through your movie, your main character gets what they want.
Yeah.
Not what they
100%.
need. What they
after
want.
thinking about that, it'd be fun to re-edit the movie and just re-release it.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
See how it would feel.
Did David Mamet watch it for the first time going, I did not fucking write it that way. They re-edited it. I had that scene after or whatever. I don't know. I love you, Mamet. If you ever hear this, I love you. Anyway, so I've got this is the same problem I have with Mark Hamill. I have to make sure Mark Hamill knows how much I love him, even though I was trashing him a little bit in some of those Star Wars podcasts we were doing.
Yeah.
I do love you, Hamill. Anyway, all right, so that's my problems with the midpoint there, right? This is 1957. He becomes president. He's president of Teamsters, I want to say for 10 years before he finally gets convicted. RFK finally gets him, right? But no, it's not even RFK, because after Kennedy is assassinated.
He was assassinated, yeah.
But here's the thing. They don't show it in The Irishman, and they certainly don't show it in this movie. But anything you look up in the history of how this all went down, when JFK was assassinated, there are reports that Hoffa stood up on the chair in the cafe that he was eating in and cheered.
Whoa.
Because he knew that with JFK gone, RFK is not going to be Attorney General anymore. Whoever the next president is going to change that. And he'll no longer come after us. Plus, he also knew something else, that the mob was probably involved with JFK's killing to begin with.
Well, yeah, it makes you wonder what he knew.
Right, exactly. Man. But they don't show it in The Irishman. With the movie with Scorsese, the Scorsese director Al Pacino plays Hoffa in that movie, and he's very subdued. He just goes back down, he's on the TV, and he sits back down and finishes his coffee or whatever it is. They don't show it then either. But any report, if you look it up, there was a lot of reports that he cheered. That there were people in the cafe that were like, this guy's fucking standing on a table cheering.
The whole country's mourning, and he's up there cheering.
And he's on his chair cheering. Okay, so I talk about that a little bit here in my notes. Okay, so that's the tangible goal. So we all know what happens after a character's midpoint scene, where they get their tangible goal. Everything starts to go to shit, right? Sure enough, that happens in the second half of this film. Some bad things start to happen. And here's where we get into some of Danny DeVito's little tricks here, right? I love the courtroom scene where they have interjected the big face, and then there's like intercut with like Jimmy and Bobby Charo and Pete Connolly, I think his name is, little Petey, played by John C. Reilly in an early movie for him.
Yeah.
Sitting there, and the guy's big face is like in the foreground. It says, we have one more witness for the prosecution. And then the camera sort of pans over and Petey disappears.
Yeah, right? That was cool.
So it's a cool scene.
It is.
Little director trick there, but you know what's going on there, right?
Yeah. Because it worked. I thought it worked.
It worked. It definitely works. Again, these work. That's why Danny does them.
Yeah.
But so, obviously, then he gets convicted. He has to go to prison. I think he goes to prison in 1967. So I want to say for 10 years, he was elected president in 57. So from 57 to 67, he's running roughshod over everybody. He's the president of Teamsters. Things start to go to shit, though, with all the stuff that's going on with the pension fund and laundering money, wiring money, illegal wire transfers, all that shit. They finally get him. What they don't show is how he gets out. Right? They talk about how he gets out in 1971, and they talk about there was a deal that got him out, which story-wise we're going to talk about because that leads to the all is lost scene, right? What isn't discussed is how he got out. And again, this is interesting as far as history. Nixon wanted the Teamsters to vote for him, right? So he told the Teamsters, I'll get your guy out. He told Fitz, the guy, J.T. Walsh, I think, plays Fitzsimmons, the guy that takes over as president when Jimmy's gone.
Yeah.
And he tells him, I'll get you, I'll get your boy out. I'll pardon him. But you got to get your Teamsters union, and I'm talking nationwide, to vote for me, because the union vote is what we missed out last time. Right? So we need it this time. And
what year did he get him out?
He got him out in 71. Now, he was elected president in 1970.
Interesting.
So he tells them, vote for me. And when he got elected president, his next move was, was it 70? Or was it 72? Yeah, it was 72. Sorry, the election of 72. So it was a promise that was made. I'm going to get him out. Wait, he was already president. Am I getting the years mixed up? I thought he got out in 71, but Nixon was elected twice. Sorry. Blame the fucking Heaven Hill with this 100 proof. So Nixon wins the 68 and 72 elections.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So he's already president. But he tells the Teamsters, I need your vote in 72.
It's interesting. This sheds some light. There's a guy I work with. I've known him since I've been at Chrysler since 1999. And he was my team leader. He hired in. He's got like 50 years seniority now. He's still there. And I love this guy. His name's Terrace. Shout out to Terrace. But Terrace and I would always get into political conversations because I knew he couldn't stand this back in the. It was George W. He couldn't stand. No, you know what? Actually, he thought George W. was an idiot, so he was graceful to George W. He hated Reagan. He was he was an old school guy, old school union guy. He hated Reagan and all that, but he thought he liked Nixon. And I bet you this has something to do with it.
Right.
The unions kind of gathered around Nixon around that time when he let Hoffa out. Yeah. And that's when my buddy Terrace hired into Chrysler and joined the union in 71.
So it all makes sense now. So Nixon gets the Teamsters to vote for him. They promised their backing for the 72 election. So he's already president in 68. His problem was he was afraid. When was RFK shot? Was it 68 or 69? No.
I can look it up. I thought it was 68, but no, let me look it up.
I think it is because that's also when Martin Luther King died, right? It was 1968. It was June of 1968. So he was going to run.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
So he was going to run for president in 68, right? Because November would have been election time, right? So he was running for president. In June, he announced, remember, because it was at the hotel in Chicago that he won the Democratic primary.
Yeah.
And he was like, let's go to the White House. You know what I mean? He's killed there in June of 68. So that paves Nixon's way. Now, keep in mind, all that's connected, too, because they believe that the mob's role in JFK the mob also had a role in killing RFK to pave Nixon's way to the White House.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. So, wait, it gets better. So, Nixon's now in office, and Jimmy is already in prison at this point because he went to prison in 67. So, maybe Nixon promised it in 68, or maybe he said, you know what, it looks bad if I do it right away. Let's wait. I got to wait for the second go-around. But either way, he cons the Teamsters into saying, okay, we're all going to vote for you if you get our boy out. Jimmy can't be in there any longer. We got to get him out. Right. He says, okay. But the mob was still making so much money on the pension fund.
Yeah.
But by the way, Jimmy went to jail, and the mob was still ciphering money out of the pension fund, using it to launder money, that they liked how things were going with Fitz, the president in place. So the Teamsters then told Nixon, we want him out, but we're still making money without him. So we don't really want him back. We want him out. We don't want him back. So Nixon made that part of the deal. He had to resign from the Teamsters the second he's released.
Yeah, he was pissed about that.
So that leads to... So none of that is in the movie except for when he's told that, right?
Yeah,
all is lost scene. He gets released from prison, and he's getting ready for his big announcement, and he's telling Fitz in the back room, hey, you did a good job, but now that I'm back, here's what I want to do on day one, here's what I want to do on day two, and he's like, yeah, about that.
Right.
One more thing I forgot to tell you as part of your release condition. So that's the all is lost. Jimmy's out. He has to resign from the Teamsters. He's forced out. And he's pissed, right? Which then leads him to start threatening the mob.
Yeah.
You need to get rid of Fitz. You need to get me back. I'm the reason you're here. I'm the reason you're making all this money. And he threatens him. If you don't get me back in, I'm going to the press. And I'm going to tell them fucking everything. Well,
we know what happened.
Well, we know what happens after that, right?
Well, we think we know what happened.
Yeah, we think we know what happens. So there's that dark night of the soul, which usually happens before the real turning point. The real turning point, of course, of the story is right after the All Is Lost, is where Bobby goes to D'Alessandro, and that's when he gives the threat, and that's when he says, "We're going to go to the press." That to me changes the whole direction of the story, because now they're not friends anymore.
Yeah.
Right? That moment, they're no longer buddies. They're no longer friends, D'Alessandro and Hoffa. They're now enemies. And it leads to a third act, rather quick third act, where, it's sort of the resolution of the film. It all comes into fruition about what's going to happen next. Now, again, some real life things that make this film a little bit where people question it. In the film, the guy that's been hanging out at the Roadhouse all day, Frank Whaley, by the way, who's in numerous movies you've seen. He's in Pulp Fiction.
It's funny. His name in the movie is Young Kid.
Yeah, Young Kid.
Didn't even give him a name.
And you know who he is in Pulp Fiction? Check out the big brain on bread. He's the guy in the beginning that Samuel L. Jackson kills, right? Because he stole the briefcase from
He's got
Marcellus.
a very recognizable face, too. I think he's been in a bunch of stuff.
He's been in a lot of stuff. He has been in a lot of stuff. So he's actually the lead in a movie called Swimming with Sharks, which came out in '95 with Kevin Spacey.
Oh, he was in The Doors.
About the film industry. Yeah, he's in The Doors as well. So anyway, he's been in a lot of stuff. But anyway, so he's been hanging out at this Roadhouse all day, which, by the way, the Roadhouse is in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. I don't know if you know that.
Oh, wow.
Not where it was shot. I'm talking about in real life.
Yeah,
That's where Jimmy was last seen.
Oh.
He was at that Roadhouse waiting to meet with the mob because he said, we got to meet and talk this out. Again, to tie this into The Irishman a little bit, the movie The Irishman, they kind of tell it a little bit more of how it's happened. Most evidence says Jimmy's car was left there, by the way. In the movie, it's not. They kill him. Mm-hmm. They shoot Bobby Charo. They throw them both in the car, and then they drive his car into the back of a rig, right?
Right.
An 18-wheeler, and they drive off, never to be seen from again.
Right.
In real life, his car was left at the Roadhouse. It was left unlocked.
Oh,
and there was
wow.
no evidence of foul play. The car's just there. There's no blood stains or spilled coffee, nothing.
Interesting.
So what investigators believe is the mob did show up, and they said, we gotta go somewhere to meet. And he got in the car willingly.
Yeah.
Right? The reason why people think Bobby Charo, part of who makes up his character, is Frank Sheeran, the Irishman, the one who eventually kills him, is because in the book, I Heard You Paint Houses, Frank Sheeran says that's what happened. We got him into the car, we drove him to another house, and when we went in, it was just me and him, and he saw there was nobody there. Mm. And right then, he's like, we got to go. And when he turned around, Frank shoots him in the back of the head.
Yeah.
That's how he depicts how he killed Hoffa, and that's what's in the movie The Irishman. Now, there's a lot of real-life mobsters that dispute that. They're like, that didn't fucking happen. That guy's telling all kinds of bullshit stories. Whatever. But the evidence shows that his car was left behind at the Roadhouse, and there was no signs of foul play. That's why it's such a mystery, right? Nobody knows what happened to him. The movie sort of makes it an interesting sort of how they think it happened. This kid was waiting around all day at the Roadhouse. Bobby Charo's talking to him all day. And then when he says, I really want to thank you, he says, no, take this coffee over and you go thank that guy. What does he do? He takes out a gun.
Right.
So it's an interesting ending. Again, my only real problem with the writing, and again, now here's where you talk about, this is another problem right here. I just remember, before we recap, he never achieves his spiritual goal, or so we think. Right? His tangible goal was to be the president of Teamsters. Jimmy was always in it for himself, and he was always in it for money, right? He claims he was in it for the working man. Mm-hmm. But really, he wanted power. Because the second half, when the mob was telling him, we don't need you anymore, he doesn't go down lightly.
Right.
You know what I mean? He doesn't just roll over and say, oh, I guess you don't need me anymore. He's pissed. He wants his power back, right? So it's evidence to me that his goals were to be in power. Mm-hmm. So remember that the spiritual goal is something you didn't know you needed.
Right.
Well, as a union man yourself, you tell me, what is Jimmy Hoffa's legacy? Is it helping millions of labor workers over the United States for 60, 70 years now? Is Jimmy Hoffa one of the people we can say is responsible for that? would you give Jimmy Hoffa that credit that he was part of creating what we know of the Teamsters?
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah.
Right. So what I'm saying is, did he know then that his spiritual goal would be that he would change the landscape of labor?
Would be his legacy.
For 70 years plus. Right? Probably not. He probably did not think that that was going to be his spiritual goal. So here's the problem. We can assume all that, but we don't see it in the movie. And why? Because here's what they could have done, and what they do with almost every biopic ending, right? Give me an epilogue. Right? Give me something at the end. As that truck drives off into the sunset and it goes black, before you run the credits, give me something on screen.
Yeah.
Give me something that says,
that
Jimmy Hoffa disappeared in whatever it was it 75? Whatever it was, Jimmy Hoffa disappeared on this, blah, 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 blah. His legacy lives on. The Teamsters Union today, or people that are organized union laborers, whatever you want to say, today in America is 40 million or whatever. Back then it was 100,000, whatever. You know what I mean? You could say this is thanks to Jimmy Hoffa, that he created what we know of the union today, right? They had a great opportunity to give us a nice printed epilogue right on the screen.
Yeah.
And they didn't. So that's my other problem with the writing is we never get a chance to really see his spiritual goal.
Right.
It's all left shrouded in mystery.
So you couple the other problems with that, and it leaves you, I don't know, it leaves you wanting more, right?
Yes,
it just leaves you wanting more. Because, so it starts off with, who's this about?
Yeah. Whose story
Who's
is
this
it?
about? Some editing problems with telling the story. And then the finish, it just leaves you unsatisfied.
Yes.
Because that's not exactly how it happened, right? Because the evidence tells you otherwise.
Right.
So,
right.
He's gone. We know that. So, yeah.
So a couple other notes I put down. So one of the other little tricks that Danny does, there's little things like this. Danny DeVito's driving, right? And it's a side shot. Right, is driving, and then it superimposes his face walking, right? But it's the same head.
Yeah.
Right, but he goes from the car to walking now. You know what I mean? So there's a couple little cool things like that. One of the ones I really want to talk about, because it really, to me, again, I'm not a master of screenplay. First of all, I got to grab a beer for this. I got to grab one of my talls because I actually loved this part of the movie, but I thought how I could make it better.
Okay.
Right? And again, writers, anyone that listens to this podcast, it's all about what can you do to improve something, right? What can you do to make something better? In your own screenplays, if we ever talk about something and you're like, yeah, maybe I could change that. This is an example.
Yeah.
Oh, did you hear that crack? I didn't hold it close enough to the...
Yeah, we heard it.
It's okay. I'll have another one in a minute. So, all right. So, the bathroom scene. Oh, so Bobby is telling the Billy Flynn story for seemingly the 100th time. And the story gets better every time he tells it, right? So he goes to the bathroom. He's half in the bag now. And a guy follows him in the bathroom. And they're shooting this shit. They're talking. And then he realizes the guy's from the government, right? And he's trying to get him to turn heel and be a witness for the prosecution, right?
Yeah.
It's a great scene because they're standing side by side at the urinal, but they're looking at each other through the mirror.
Yeah.
Right? He's looking at the mirror to see the other guy, and he's looking at Bobby through the mirror, which is, a director trick of this is sort of, we're not really communicating. We're talking in languages, you know what I mean? Because the guy is not saying flat out yet. Only when he turns to him and faces him does he say flat out, like you could turn. You could be a witness for the prosecution. You know what I mean? Before he says that, it's all double talk.
Yeah.
And they're talking to each other through the mirrors.
Yeah.
But what's the best part is when it's over, he says, you want me to rat on Jimmy Hoffa?
Yeah.
You want me to turn on him? And the guy leaves, and there's a shot of DeVito next to a mirror, right? And the mirror goes on forever.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
That.
It's his face reflected in the mirror, reflected in the mirror, reflected in the mirror, and it goes on forever.
Yeah.
As he's laughing.
Yeah.
Great shot, but here's how it would have been better. They should have saved that shot, and I'll tell you where they should have put it. At the end. So, you're telling me that Hoffa sat in that car for 4 to 6, 7 hours, God knows how long, waiting for the mob to show up for this meeting. They were drinking coffee all day.
He had to use a bathroom.
You telling me he didn't take a leak once? You could have ended the film, not ended it, but part of the ending. He goes to take a leak.
Yeah.
Right? And maybe he has a conversation with the kid that's going to kill him. And as the kid leaves, Hoffa's there, but his mirror image goes on forever. That would signify his legacy lasts forever.
Yeah, I like your version better, man.
That would have been a better director move for DeVito. Instead, DeVito's got to make him the guy that lasts forever. You're not even playing a real fucking guy. You're playing an amalgamation, bitch. And you want your image in this mirror lasting forever? Right. Fuck you. That should have been Hoffa lasting forever. He's the one that lasts forever. Nobody knows who you are, you amalgamated bitch. But anyway, that's how I would have made it better.
Yeah. Bobby who?
Bobby who? You ain't even a real fucking person. Anyway.
That's great,
so
man.
I loved the shot, but I even wrote in my notes it should have been Hoffa.
Yeah.
That's what I wrote.
No, that's brilliant.
That shot would have been way better.
I want you to re-edit it.
And put it, again, don't put it halfway through the film. Put it at the end where he's at the roadhouse taking a leak, because then it signifies his spiritual goal will have been achieved.
Right.
We would have seen it visually.
Yeah. Man.
Sometimes I amaze even myself.
I'd like to know, man, is there any footage on the cutting room floor that you could re-edit that scene and
not without Danny's blessing.
Oh, shit.
So, a couple other thoughts I wrote down here. Okay, so I wrote down. So it's known that the mob helped JFK get in office, and then he turned on them because the second the mob rigged the election in Chicago to get him enough electoral votes, right, to beat Nixon, because Nixon was supposed to win that election in 1960. There's a lot of talk that JFK stole the election, rigged it with use of the mob. But then what does he do? He makes his brother attorney general on day one of his presidency, and he goes right after Hoffa and the mob. So they felt betrayed, right?
Yeah.
Like, we got you in office, motherfucker, and now all of a sudden, you turn around and now you're going after us.
Right.
So they didn't like that. He turned his back on them. They got him in office. He turned his back on him. He puts Bobby in charge of, RFK in Attorney General. He goes after the mob. And then we talk about how the film The Irishman, you know what I mean, kind of plays on that a little bit. So there's a lot of disputing of what really happened, right? The end of this film is highly disputed. The end of The Irishman is highly disputed. There are people that said Jimmy was buried under Giant Stadium in New York, you know? So there's all kinds of things. You can look them up on the internet. There's no
I doubt
shortage.
they'll ever find any remains.
Well, I don't think they ever will, because the most obvious...
Even if it was in concrete, someday, 1,000 years from now, they would find him. I don't think they're going to find him, because I think they probably cremated everything.
Yeah, he clearly had to have been cremated, because how else are you going to get rid of that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean...
So, and they even say, although if you're a fan of the show Forensic Files, that's interesting, because there was a guy who killed his wife, burned her, like cremated her, and they still found her because they found little pieces of her teeth in this flower planter he had that he put all her ashes in. So it is still possible. But if you took the ashes of Jimmy Hoffa after you've set him on fire, and you took all his ashes, and you say threw him in the Hudson River in New York or something like that,
or then put him in a cement mixer. I mean, then you ain't gonna find nothing.
Right? Then he is part of the foundation, right?
Yeah.
But you'll never find it. You're never gonna find him. So just to give you another little thing. So the movie Ghost came out in 1990, right? I was 15 years old. I didn't know all this stuff about Jimmy Hoffa then. I had heard of the name.
Yeah, of course.
You know, but I didn't know.
Especially you grew up in the Detroit area.
Yeah, but I didn't know a lot about him or his history. So I was 15 years old watching Ghost. And one of the characters in that film is tied up with the mob. Patrick Swayze takes the money, right? Gets the money out. Gets Whoopi Goldberg to get the money out. For those of you that are fans of the movie Ghost, you know what I'm talking about. The next scene, Patrick Swayze is there as a ghost, right? He's watching his friend frantically trying to look for it on the computers. And he goes, "You're never going to find it. They're going to get rid of you, Carl. They'll never find you. They're going to bury you right next to Jimmy Hoffa." And he says that line. And again, as a 15-year-old, when you have no idea the history,
right.
You don't get the greatness of that line until years later when you understand, and you're like, that's what he meant. That's,
of course.
Fuck. So as a 48-year-old man now, I want to go back, and I have actually gone back and rewatched a lot of movies I grew up with.
Yeah.
Because I get more of the jokes now as an adult.
There's so many cultural references to Hoffa. I mean, yeah. I mean, in just about every aspect of entertainment, I'm sure SNL. I mean, there's been tons of references, And
it leads into so much mystery is fascinating. Speculation is fascinating. And when you can't tell me a clear-cut who killed Kennedy or a clear-cut what happened to Hoffa, and knowing that those two things are basically connected,
right?
That makes that whole story even more intriguing.
Yeah.
So, if anyone listening to this, if you really wanted to have fun, you should watch, maybe in order, JFK, 13 Days, Hoffa,
and The Irishman.
And that might explain a little bit about what the fuck happened, right? And 13 Days only to show how much the government really was against Kennedy.
Yeah.
And during the Cuban Missile Crisis, they wanted him to invade Cuba, and he wouldn't.
Right.
So, and that's key to why he was killed. So if you watch those movies all at once, one after another, JFK, 13 Days, Hoffa, and The Irishman, it might explain a little bit the mystery that we don't know.
Yeah.
It's interesting to note, too, that both of these scripts that we said we have problems with, the first acts have problems.
Yeah.
They usually clean up a lot of this in the second act. Both second halves of these films are better than the first halves, right? And you can say, well, it's like that for every movie. No, not necessarily. If you have a really good written first half, it enhances the second half. But if you have a second half that has to redeem the first half, like you said, you're going to lose your audience in the first half hour. They're going to walk out, or they're going to turn it off or turn the channel.
Right.
So both these films suffered from poor first halves, great second halves, great performances all around, although, like I said, Jack usually could fart into a jar and get nominated for Best Actor, did not get a nomination for this movie, which is important to note because, it's the kind of movie that gets nominated for Best Actor, right? You're playing a biopic. I mean, when we did Walk the Elvis show, both Joaquin Phoenix and Austin Butler were nominated for Best Actor for their roles as playing biopic, musicians. This is an Oscar type of movie that got left out in the cold. It got 2 nominations, cinematography and makeup, and I don't think it won either one. I'd have to look that up, but I don't think it won either one.
I can't even count how many times Jack has been nominated. I'm looking at it right now, and there's so many. It's like Best Actor in a Leading Role. Prizzi's Honor? I never even heard of that movie.
You never heard of Prizzi's Honor?
No.
Oh, my God. Everyone that's listening on this podcast, you'll have to forgive my brother.
I don't know. I mean...
That's a classic 80s mob movie.
I've never seen it.
Here, just do this. How many times has Jack Nicholson been nominated for an Academy Award? 12.
Wow.
12 Academy Award nominations make Nicholson the most nominated male actor in Academy's history.
He was nominated for About Schmidt.
Oh, that's another good one. Tell me you're telling me you haven't seen these movies.
I've never seen About Schmidt.
About Schmidt has got one of... You want to talk about tangible and spiritual goals? Watch About Schmidt.
Okay.
The last 30 seconds of that movie is the ultimate spiritual goal.
Okay.
The ultimate. The ultimate.
Yeah.
Because you'll watch this 2-hour movie and you'll think, man, nothing is happening in this movie. I have no idea where it's going. I have no idea what the message is, what they're trying to tell me. This is just a miserable old man. He's just an angry old fuck. And there's no point to this. And then the last 30 seconds will make you cry. It will fucking make you cry. I'm getting goosebumps right now thinking about it. You gotta watch you gotta watch the whole movie to get it, though. Don't go on YouTube and say, fucking show me the ending of About Schmidt. That will ruin it.
You gotta suffer first.
You gotta suffer through it because it makes the ending so much better. Plus, you won't get it. You won't get it. You won't know what's going on. You have to watch the movie.
All right.
Watch About Schmidt, and the last 30 seconds is one of the biggest examples of a character reaching their spiritual goal.
Okay.
That you'll ever see.
That came out 21 years ago, 2002.
Fuck, was it that long?
Yeah. All right, so...
Let's land this plane?
Yeah, you want to do 6 degrees. We got to do 6 degrees yet.
So for those that are listening, remember that it's not a Stump Jerome. We just want to see if it can be done.
Yeah, we want to see. So the idea is we believe Jerome contends. Firstly, I mean, I'm a believer because you've gotten even the most difficult ones that I threw at you. You contend that any two actors that have graced the big screen can be connected within 6 degrees.
Right.
It's a play on Kevin Bacon, the 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon.
But unlike those guys, we don't use TV shows and we don't use directors.
Exactly.
You have to be an actor or actress on the big screen in a feature-length film, no short films.
Right.
Feature-length film. And we've yet to find two that cannot be. Everyone can be.
Yep.
But this one, and I was going to say, that usually sometimes, I will admit, sometimes I'm like, oh, I got to fucking look that up. Like, I need some resources on this. I don't know it off the top of my head. You know what I mean? This one I did with no resources.
Yeah, and so because of the movies, I didn't take any of the B-list actors that had a scene and you didn't even know who they were. I didn't pick any of them.
How dare you call them B-listers?
Whatever. I mean,
they're listening right now and they're like, that fucking asshole.
But you know what I mean? There's people who just got roles and they were great. You know, their face was on the screen. They might even had a line.
Wow.
But I didn't pick any of them. I picked two guys in these movies that I was like, all right, I don't know. I knew it wouldn't be that hard, but it's fun still. So I picked Rob Rubin, who played Rubin in Norma Rae, and Kevin Anderson, who played RFK Jr. or RFK, not Jr.
Bobby Kennedy. Now we can call him Bobby Kennedy. Now here's the funny thing about those two. Kevin Anderson was actually the easy one because that motherfucker's actually been in a lot of shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? A lot of people might see his face and like, yeah, I've seen him before. He's been in a lot of stuff. Ron Liebman, for as big as he was, and he seems larger than life in Norma Rae, he doesn't have a huge filmography.
Right.
He's done a lot.
But he's been in movies with some big people.
And he's done a lot of TV work.
Yeah, that's true.
But he's not huge, like a huge name. He's not like an A-list. You know, Ron Liebman's not going to be your lead that sells tickets, right?
Yeah.
Like a Sally Field or Tom Hanks, you know.
Yeah,
he's
Jack.
Or Jack, you know. But neither is Kevin Anderson. So Ron Liebman was actually tougher than Kevin Anderson.
Okay.
But when you say Kevin Anderson, I was like, oh, dude, I know a lot of movies that motherfucker's been in. He's been in a lot of shit. But when you said Ron Liebman, I was like, fuck, I really only know one other big film of his that I've seen was Night Falls on Manhattan, which is a 90s movie with Andy Garcia and Richard Dreyfuss. Mm-hmm. And it's a really interesting sort of corrupt cop with street gang subplots going on. And Ron Liebman plays a district attorney. And who's trying to prosecute this gang leader, drug dealer, who shoots a cop. Mm-hmm. The cop's son is the lawyer he puts in charge of the case, and that's Andy Garcia. The cop, by the way, that gets shot is Ian Holm. You know him. Sure. He was Ash in Alien. Yeah. So anyway, it's a decent film.
So you connected him to Andy Garcia.
Andy Garcia, which was because again, I don't know a lot of Ron Liebman movies, and I can't use Friends.
So let me guess. Did you go to Oceans?
I went to Ocean's 11 because why not? There's a shitload of people, right? And that led me right to you know who, Julia Roberts, who's in Ocean's 11, and she was in Sleeping with the Enemy with Kevin Anderson, who plays her love interest after she leaves her abusive husband. When she goes to that small town, he's the first guy she meets. So Kevin Anderson to Rod Liebman, it took 3 degrees.
Yeah.
Sleeping with the Enemy, Ocean's. And I did that without any help. I did that one in my head.
Yeah, not bad. And you said if you used one of the movies.
If I used Hoffa, it was done in 2.
Yeah.
Because who did I say? The guy that plays Tom Harmon from the Detroit News in Hoffa, Paul Guilfoyle, I think his name is. What was he? He was in a movie with Ron Liebman. Oh, he was in Night Falls on Manhattan. He was in that movie too.
Gotcha.
So he was in that movie too. So if I used Hoffa, it's only 2 connections.
Yeah.
So remember, again, the point of this game is not to stump me. It's can we find 2 people that can't be connected?
All right. Next time I am going to pull 2 actors who maybe had one line.
Dude, the one you did for Everything Everywhere All at Once, that was tough. All right? Because you picked a kid. No. It wasn't that. Oh, yeah, maybe it was that. Was it that one? Who did you pick where it was like the kid's only been in one movie?
No, so Everything Everywhere All at Once, I picked the girlfriend.
I think it was the Hugelmans.
Oh,
where the kid was that was the only movie.
Yeah,
he
that
was
was
in.
his first. That was his first movie.
So I had to use that.
You
movie.
had to use it. Yeah.
That was fun.
It was.
Yeah. Dig deep on the next one. Dig deep.
Well, so was this, and I'm glad we got to do a union theme. These are difficult times with inflation and everything going on with AI and as far as Hollywood goes. These are difficult contract negotiations, and I thought it would be good to do a couple of movies that were union themed for Labor Day, which is coming up here. So
we have to announce. I'm so excited about this. We're going to edit. Well, as you're listening to this, we are actually already edited and released this one for Labor Day. It's our September episode.
Yes.
We have 2 episodes left.
October is recorded and waiting to be edited.
We have 3 episodes left. We have October, November, and December. No, 2 of them are. October's is recorded and November's is recorded.
Yes.
We're going to do a special Christmas episode.
Yeah, we haven't decided on that yet.
We haven't decided yet on that, but I cannot tell you I'm so excited. The October Halloween special will blow your fucking mind. We compare and contrast. Can I talk about it? I got to talk about it.
You got to talk about it. Just go for it, man.
Silence of the Lambs and Midsummer. And it is a fantastic show. Not only is it a great show because it's movies that we love or are very disturbing films, but I want to say that's the show where I almost killed my brother. I almost killed him. Because we get into, I don't know, we get into a laughing fit.
I may have lost control of my bladder at
He almost chokes to death. So you got to look forward to the October episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as you're listening to this one, this is September. This is our Labor Day Union show. And we hope you've enjoyed all the shows up till now. We're really trying to get on this where we do 12 shows a season, which is 1 a month. And we're already preparing for our recordings for 2024.
Yes.
So that we can kick the ball off right in January.
I feel like we've gotten into a groove here, and so editing for a couple amateurs, editing's always been a pain in learning how to do it. And if we can actually make this work with Clubhouse recording live, we'll see how it goes. It could go incredibly bad. We're drinking live with an audience.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. May Jerome's true colors come out.
We'll either be canceled after the first week, or we'll make
Or I'm going to get a lot of new followers on our Instagram.
Right.
Like, who's this Jerome guy? I want to fucking drink with that dude.
So anyways, stay tuned. Be sure to follow us on whatever app you're listening to podcasts on. Go to Clubhouse, make a profile on Clubhouse, and look around. Clubhouse is a neat space. Basically, it's live audio. They call it social audio. And you can basically follow any type of club or room or house or whatever they call it. They call them houses now. And on just about any topic. So there's a lot of nonsense on there, but man, you can find some good houses and get to know some people that lead those houses, and they have conversations, and I really enjoy it. So I think it's made for us. I really think it's going to be something we can play with, and it'll be a way for us to talk movies, have some beers, and engage in our audience. So we'll see how that goes. I'm nervous, honestly, but it's gonna be fun. So
yeah. One of the benefits we take from this, doing it the way we've been doing it, is that we can always say, "Okay, let's stop."
Yeah,
because
we can edit.
We can edit this out later.
Now, the good
we
thing
start
with
doing live shit, it's going to be crazy.
with Clubhouse, you can mute yourself and others. Now, what we'll have to get good at is muting ourselves whenever we need to burp.
Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, it's like, we're just going to gross everyone out the whole show. So, anyway, you want to land this plane?
Yeah, let's land it. So we're excited. We hope you like this show. We're excited for the shows that are coming up. Again, the November one, we were going to do a Thanksgiving theme, but we actually have a war movie theme coming up in November.
Yes.
Where we do All Quiet on the Western Front and The Thin Red Line. So another good show there.
Really enjoyed making that.
That one's already done in the can. So that one's coming out in November. We haven't done our December one yet, our Christmas show. We are going to do a Christmas episode. But this has been, I hope you enjoyed it. This was fun. This is our Labor Day show, all for the unions. And what do you think? Anything to add?
No, I would just add, get to your local theater and support your local theater. Go watch the movies. Go watch Barbie again. I know you've seen it already. If you haven't, your wife wants you to see it again.
It's reached $1 billion worldwide.
It's amazing. I haven't seen it, but Jesse really wants me to see it. I'll go see it. I got no problem seeing it.
All right. Good night, everyone.